welcome to the EmpowerHer series. I'm your host, Jessica Jane. This series is all about real women, real stories, and real growth. Our stories have power, and when we share them, we remind others that they're never alone. Get ready to be inspired. This is EmpowerHer.
Hello, Faye, and welcome to Empower Her. I'm so excited to have you on the Empower 2026 series. Reading a little bit about your background, your story, and what I know about you so far, I'm really excited for you to share that with everybody because so much of it resonated with me. You've got a very similar background to me in so many ways. So I'm looking forward to you sharing that with our audience because there's so many people it's going to resonate with and really help as well. So to get started, before we dig a bit deeper, can you just introduce yourself quickly, let people know who you are and a little bit about your background?
So my name's Faye Allen. I'm Managing Director of the Quantum team for EMEA at Rimcus. And I'm a quantity surveyor by background. Started in the industry when I was 18 officially on a training contract with Tri Construction. So 4 days a week working, 1 day a week doing college and then later university. And then I've sort of worked for various contractors for about 20 years and then moved into dispute resolution and expert witness work about 12 years ago now. So yeah, sort of been in the industry a long time. And before that, I was in it with my dad because he was an estimator in the industry. So I sort of feel like really I've been in construction in some form or another most of my life.
Oh, that's lovely. So you've kind of really seen it through the eyes of your dad to start with and then got into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. So can you just take us kind of further back, really? Go into a little bit about your early years, your upbringing, and what that kind of looked like for you.
Oh, so I've got two younger brothers. And when I was younger, my mum, for I think up till I was about 11 or 12, she was epileptic, so she used to have fits. So I was quite responsible, I suppose, as a young girl, because if my mum had a fit, I had to sort of bring her around with my smelling salts because I used to have a little bottle of them in my pocket that as a kid you always sniff them as well, nearly knock yourself out just to see what it would do, even though but so it used to be like when the old telephone was on the wall and you had to sort of like keep doing that, and if you did it wrong you had to put it down and do it again. So I'd ring my dad and go next door and get a neighbour to come and help with my mum if I couldn't get her onto the sofa. And so I think quite a responsible young girl. And then when one of my brothers was born, he had a problem with his eye, so lots of trips to the hospital with him. And I just think, I was quite older than my years, I think. So I think that's probably part of the reason I struggled through school, because I think a lot of kids didn't really relate to me in some ways because I think I was a lot more responsible, I suppose, and I'd taken on quite a lot from a young age. So yeah, I didn't really get on with my peers particularly well and got bullied quite badly through school.
Okay, so yeah, everything like that is something that really did resonate with me when I was reading a little bit about your story. So with taking on such a caring role from such a young age, which is very similar to me. I've always took on the caring role within my family. My mum needed a lot of care. My mum always suffered with like depression, bipolar, and other issues within the family. So I've always been the one that's kind of looked after everybody and cared for everybody. So I completely resonated with that and how that must have been growing up as well. So do you feel like that shaped you in any way? Do you feel like it shaped you with more like the responsibility, the strength that you've needed, that resilience, and just in womanhood today, how do you feel it's shaped you?
I think I'm a natural nurturer anyway, so I think it's made me quite a nurturing person and I do care about people around me. But I think also it gives you quite a lot of skills that I only got called a carer fairly recently. I didn't really ever think of it like that. For me, that was completely normal life. It was just how it was. That's how we sort of navigated life as a family. And, even friends, if I sort of went to their houses, they'd sort of know sometimes my mum might hit the deck if she had a fit. So it was just very normal. I never thought about it as a caring role, but it makes you quite a responsible person. And it means I think it's part of the reason I'm quite organised. I can be a little bit OCD about how I like things because you just needed to be able to do things a certain way so that it was done right and it was done quickly. And I suppose it's something that I've brought into my work later on as well. So if something happens or there's any sort of emergency, I'm the one that will be straight away, right, bang, this is what we've got to do. I'm not a sort of bystander. I'll be the one that gets right in there and sorts it out, and has a plan, and people might be panicking around you, but I'll be the one that can just sort of stay calm in the moment and sort things out. And that's probably what I learned as a child. I didn't need to panic because something bad was happening. I just needed to navigate my way through it. And I think I've done that a lot. I mean, I remember I was on a course once and someone hit the deck and they had a hypo, so diabetic, and everyone was panicking, and I was like, just get out of my way, where's his bag? I needed to find the dextrose. For me it was very normal because I've got a friend who's diabetic and I didn't feel the need to stress. So I think in times where you need that resilience, it's probably a little bit easier because I had that upbringing.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that, and I do think I'm the exact same, and everything you've just said is literally me as well. And I think it does really shape you in those ways and help you become resilient, and just to know how to deal with things even when you don't know how to, if that makes sense. I think there's many situations even now that I'm in as well that, again, just like how you said, I'll be there to help, but even though if I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll be there to make sure I can help and fix it the best way I can possibly. I can't just leave the situation. So I completely resonate with that. And even though I think so many struggles in life, I think even though we don't want those kind of struggles, it really does shape us, and it really enables us to grow as well and become those better versions of ourselves. So sometimes they're a blessing as well, aren't they? Because it does help you in life.
Yeah, definitely.
You've also mentioned the bullying side of your school life. And again, this is something that hugely resonates with me. I was really brutally bullied at school, physically as well, physically beaten, which led me not going to school much. So it left me with little education, which also left me feeling like, and being made to feel like I would never be good enough. I would never become anything in life because I didn't have good grades. I didn't have a good education. So I never really felt I had such little self-worth and didn't really know where I fit anymore. So can you explain a little bit about that with you and how you feel like the bullying side of things has shaped you? And do you feel like that's really impacted how you show up in life today as well?
It's hard to say how it shapes you because I think you'll probably know if you had it as well. When you're a kid, it just hurts all the time. You just feel like, what am I doing wrong? Why don't I fit in? My parents sent me to a completely different secondary school where not one person from my primary school went, and I still got bullied. So I do think a lot of it was because I was probably older than my years because of my childhood. But I think what I did, I didn't sort of bunk off school. I used to hide in secondary school in the chapel because not many people would go in there. So I'd go and hide in the chapel so that I would be out of the way of the people that were horrible. And I always just used to think, I know my mum used to say, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you. And I've never agreed with that because actually it's very harmful. And I think it's probably why I've always been quite careful with people, because I know words can harm a lot because of what I went through as a child. And I think it's part of the reason I'm quite passionate about, I love a laugh, don't get me wrong, and I can be very sarcastic and I like to have a giggle, but I'm also very aware that there's a line of banter that a lot of people cross that I think crosses into bullying and can harm. And I think it's only when you've perhaps been through that you understand how harmful that can be. And I think a lot of people don't. They just think it's normal. And we get it a lot in construction. It's just banter. And it's like, well, no, it's not actually. What you're doing is actually harming someone, and it is a form of bullying. So I think there's a big education piece to sort of play. But I mean, for me, it's probably why I didn't finish my A levels and why I ended up going into construction the way I did. It's because even when I went to another school to start my A levels, I still got bullied there. So I just thought, you know what, I've had enough of this. I just wanted to get into the world of work and just get away from it all. And that's kind of what I did, really.
Yeah. I do feel like with what you've just said with the whole sticks and stones may break your bones thing, because like I say, I was physically beaten as well, like brutally beaten. I could have died, but at the same time, all of the verbal abuse that I got, and even just sitting in class when girls would I'd feel things being thrown at my head, and it would be at the end of the lesson, I'd have like chewed up chewing gum in my hair, and people just saying mean things or threatening me or saying that they would wait for me after school to physically beat me. That even those, and even if there were empty threats or not, you feel like you're constantly living in fear, and it does hurt, and you don't feel accepted. And I do feel like I didn't skip school in a way, a bit like you really. My hiding space was I had a good friend and they had like a little outhouse in their garden. So if there was any classes that the bullies were in, we would go and skip that class in their outhouse. But then I would go to the classes that the bullies wasn't in. But obviously that left me missing a lot of my education. And then further down the line, I'm a bit like you as well. I'm still up for a laugh. I love kind of a bit of a joke and stuff with people. But there is certain things that you have to be really careful of the way you say to people, because as much as certain people think that is them just having a bit of banter and a laugh, if it's triggering something in somebody that's happened in their life, like for me, some things that used to get said to me, like people would be like, "Oh, as if you don't," they would say something about, "Oh, as if you don't know that. That's just like general knowledge. You should know that," and it would trigger that sense in me of feeling a bit like I'm not good, I'm not brainy enough. I'm not educated enough. I feel stupid now, and I don't say anything around people because now I feel stupid. So you do really have to be more considerate around people, because you don't know people's life stories. You don't know what they've been through. And again, I do think it does shape you in that way, doesn't it? It makes you more aware of how to interact with people on those levels.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, you know, with everything, we have to remember we're all human and we're all having our own experience, and you don't know what goes on behind other people's closed door.
Yeah, definitely. So going into kind of your construction career, you've kind of answered a little bit of this anyway, but obviously construction isn't the general thing that women tend to be encouraged to go into or even want to go into. So what do you feel made you think this is the route for me?
I mean, I blame my dad every time. I blame him because I just couldn't really decide what I wanted to do. And I tried various jobs. I think I worked on a market, I worked in body shop for a bit, worked for a door panel company. I did a few things and I was just like not really feeling it. And he just said, "Well, you're not staying at home, come out with me on a few jobs." And I got on one particular job with him. It was like an old Tudor building that was being renovated, and I just thought, wow, the plans are really amazing. It looked like it was going to be a really cool job. And I was like, actually, this is something that I'd really like to get into. And he was like, well, fine, let's find you somewhere to work then. And that's kind of what happened. I sort of found this training contract and, yeah, joined a company, and they did sort of put me through college because I obviously hadn't finished my A levels. I had to do like an HNC. And then later they sort of supported me to go on my university degree. But even there, you know, at the beginning, I had some issues there, probably because of my sarcastic sort of comments. And you know, I overheard somebody saying, "Oh, she'll never pass her degree," sort of thing. You know, there was comments that you could hear, and I used to get really upset. But I had a really, really good boss, Gary Mumford, and he just said to me, "You know, you're just proven wrong." He was like, "I know you can do this," and we're still friends now. He's supported me throughout my career. He's amazing. And I just think I'm really blessed to have somebody like him in my corner for 32 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes that's all it takes, isn't it? Just that one person that can really change that path for you with that support to really help you believe in yourself as well and give you that support. And I love that you've had that connection with your dad. That must have been really nice to find something that you kind of could resonate with your dad on and actually spend time with him in that way as well.
Well, yeah, and it made a change because we were like this when I was a teenager. Gosh, we used to like argue like cat and dog. But my mum always said it was because we were very similar in character. So sometimes you butt heads. But yeah, no, it was really cool. And it was like years before when we'd be driving on a Sunday delivering tenders and stuff like that, because he used to do the estimating as well. And I sort of think it's sort of full circle in a way. I've sort of got to the point now where I deal with things when they go wrong, you know, and try and sort of help people navigate through those processes. So I've sort of done it from all the way through the beginning of working really early in the industry, sort of right before the job's even in the ground, before there's a spade even in the ground, and working with clients and stuff, all the way through to end of project. And then if there's problems on project, trying to help people with those as well, because sadly we get loads of issues in projects in the industry.
And how do you feel it's been as a woman working in such a male dominated industry?
So I always say predominantly male now. So I think it's not been easy, I can't lie. I've had some really difficult times in my career, and I do talk about that in my book. And I think I'm not alone. A lot of other women have had issues in the industry as well. And I think there's a combination of things that go on, you know, there is bullying, there is misogyny, there is sexism. You know, when I started, there were page-free calendars all over the walls in the site offices, and, you know, the Star was open in the welfare. You know, there was just, that was normal. And, you know, we've moved a long way from that, but unfortunately there still is misogyny and sexism. And obviously the world at the moment has almost taken a backward step in, you know, women's rights and moving things forward. So I think it's a difficult industry, but I think one thing that I always say to people is it isn't just difficult for women, it's difficult for men as well. And I think, you know, there's been enough polarization of the sexes. I think it's really about trying to work together to make the industry and the culture better for everyone, because that banter and that bullying that can be damaging for women can be just as bullying and damaging for men.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think, even in general, I think there's something more that needs to be done more so nowadays with helping women and men just be better together in general. Because I feel like a big topic that I've been speaking about a lot lately, and I'm going to be doing a lot more on, is the masculine and feminine energy. And I feel like a lot of women have felt the need to have to go into so much more of their masculine energy nowadays. And the men now don't really know what to do with that. And they don't know what their part to play is anymore with a woman. And I think that's creating a lot of confusion with men and women and how they work together, whether it be in a workplace, a relationship, just in general. So with regards to that, how do you feel that you personally navigate that feminine and masculine energy? Because I'm assuming, do you feel like with being in that industry and being around so many men, you've had to take on such a masculine energy yourself?
I mean, I think definitely early in my career, I definitely did. I wore the big shoulder padded jackets, I wore the cufflink shirts, I dressed like a bloke. I, as my dad puts it even now, have the mouth of a scaffolder. So, you know, swear like a trooper. And basically I had to act very, very much like a man to be able to get on. And I don't think I'd have probably progressed through my career if I hadn't have done that early on. And I know a lot of the women that I interviewed for the book have also had that same experience. They almost had to be a lot harder. What I think has happened as I've got older is I kind of got exhausted by it and got to a point where I can't do it anymore. And then that's almost as challenging, because you've got to navigate your own way into actually just trying to be completely you. And sometimes that's not accepted. You know, there's jobs that won't accept it. There's jobs I've left, you know, and I've left very gladly because they aren't supportive of you just being able to be yourself. And I think it's something that's really difficult for women to navigate even now. You know, there's some firms are better than others, and a lot of it is around the culture and the values of the company. Do they want to embrace you as you? And that isn't just for women, that's for men as well. Or do they want a certain stereotype of person? You know, and do they make it safe for you to be yourself? I know people talk a lot about psychological safety now. You know, is it safe for you to be vulnerable as a man, for example, on a building site? And is it safe for a woman to actually be soft when she wants to be? You know, it's a really difficult tightrope to walk.
Yeah. So you feel it was more of and maybe in general for women, it's more of a persona they feel they have to put on rather than a natural masculine energy that they've got.
I think there is some natural masculine energy. I mean, I can be quite feisty, I suppose, naturally, and I think that is a part of my character that is there. But I think the persona that I had to put on, particularly early in my career, was just exhausting. Whereas now I can just sort of, you know, I am just me. I'm sarcastic. I can be very witty, you know, if I don't say so myself, but I can also be quite hard. And I think you kind of have to balance your own way of working. And I think particularly when you are managing other people and when you move into sort of leadership positions, you have to try and tailor your style so that you're actually going to get people to actually work with you. Then, you know, like when you're managing people, it's very different to when you're trying to lead people and get them working with you. And I think that's kind of what we have to remember. We're always evolving, we're always changing, and we're always learning. So I'm not the same person this week that I was last week, and I'm the different person next week to how I am this week, because I think, you know, we have to navigate our career and our journey, and we aren't the same person. All of the things that we go through in life affect us and change us, and that's okay. I think we just have to look at ourselves as just a continuing evolution of the person, really.
Yeah, definitely. It is all a constant growth, isn't it? And I don't think you
Yeah,
ever really reach that top point of going, oh, I don't need to grow anymore. I don't need any more kind of
yeah.
personal growth or change in life. And it naturally does happen. But I'm really happy to hear though that you have felt like you're more in that safer space where you can be a bit more true to yourself now and feel like you can step into who you are more vulnerably. So, and it's lovely that you in that space, especially with that being around so many men,
Mm.
that you feel you can do that. And I think that's how that masculine and feminine energy can really come together nicely as well when a woman can feel safe around men.
And I think also men feeling safe about women. I mean, what I've always found, even when I worked on sites when I was younger, is that sometimes having me on the site, and I was always the only woman,
Hmm.
um, men are more likely to talk to you about things, and you do have different types of conversations. Whereas, we know that in construction we've got terrible mental health issues. We've got 2 men every working day, dying by suicide. So the culture is really toxic at the moment, and it's not embracing the fact that people need to talk to each other. And that is a lot of this is where that starts, just people being able to be vulnerable, being able to say, that they've got a problem.
Hmm.
It's so important. And I think it's something that I think when you have women or more women there, that dynamic does shift slightly, and it does make those conversations easier to have, and people do tend to talk more. And particularly when you're open, I'm quite open. At the moment I've got a cat who's dying of cancer, unfortunately, and I've told everyone at work, I was like, I am going to be in bits. She's very important to me. Those are conversations that maybe I wouldn't have had earlier in my career. I'd have tried to hide it and tried to just sort of work through it. Whereas now I'm like, no, do you know what? I'm a human. I'm allowed feelings, and opening myself up like that, actually, it's not a bad thing. It
Hmm.
allows other people to know that they can be safe and open up to me as well.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And I love that you've pointed that out, really, because I do think men in general do take on that very manly attitude of, I'm a man, I don't speak about my feelings. And they wouldn't feel comfortable maybe talking to another man about that because it's like, oh, he won't take it seriously. He's a man, he's going to think, he's going to tell me to suck it up kind of thing. And I do think men do be more open around women. I also run a beauty practice. So I have a cabin where I do health and beauty treatments, and I have a few men that I treat as well. And the amount that they just open up to me about and they just feel safe to talk to me about is just lovely. Because I know in general life they don't feel that there's many people that they can speak to about their issues like that. And I think it is an important thing for men to open up and speak because it does for anybody. If you hold it in, it eats away at you, doesn't it? And it's good to have that safe space where you can just open up, be vulnerable, and people can be there to listen.
Yeah, and I think traditionally women are quite good at doing that. We
Yeah.
are, we're almost wired from a very young age to talk.
Hmm.
Um, and unfortunately, men that, there's all these biases that they've been taught that they have to put up, shut up, be strong, be the provider. There's so many things that they're,
Mm.
in a constant battle with. It's not really any wonder that they do struggle to talk a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely. And even with like the saying of, "Oh, boys don't cry," and it's like I always say to men, real men do cry.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
they do, and you need that release, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a natural emotion. So, it's quite nice to think if there's more women coming into these industries as well now, that men can feel a bit more safer in that space and
Mm.
open up a little bit, which is really nice to
Yeah.
hear. So you spoke a little bit about that you have a book. Can you just share a little bit about your book, what it's about, and then we'll dig a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, so I wrote a book called Building Women, How Everyone in Construction Can Win. And the reason that it's got that strap line is because it originally started just about making the industry better for women because of some of the experiences I'd had and other women I'd spoken to. And then, as I said, when I started researching the book, I started to realise things weren't great for men either. So for me, it was really about trying to get everybody aligned and working together to make the culture better for everyone. And a big part of that was a big amount of research with women talking about what the issues are they actually face. So I did quite a survey. 302 women filled it in from beginning to end. The questions and everything are on my website. So that's fayeallen.co.uk. And I spoke to probably over 1,000 women over a 4-year period while I was writing it. But I also spoke to a lot of men, and it's for me, it's like, why do we need men on the journey, and why do we need them being allies to women? And to do that, how do we show men that doing that actually makes things better for them as well? Because I think, you know, people, they go, oh, we need men as allies, but it's like, what's in it for men? And there's so much in it for men that makes the culture better for them as well. And I mean, that's part of the reason I didn't just speak to people in construction. I spoke to people from other sectors. So I've got like RAF fighter jet pilots, for example. I've got ex-footballer, ex-rugby player. I've got people from army, you know, police, fire, business, leadership, all sorts, because we can learn so much from each other. And I think just listening to some of the experiences others have had and knowing that you have the same problems sometimes in other sectors as well, and that there are ways to navigate it, I think are really important for men and for women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I love that you have took it to both sides of sexes there. You're looking at on the men's side and the women's side. Because again, it just helps bring everybody together in such a healthier way, doesn't it? It makes everybody's work life and life in general so much smoother if we understand each other a lot better. So I'm glad that you've covered it in that way. You also have bravely shared your experience with your with sexual abuse that you experienced. And I know for a long time you felt you couldn't actually openly speak about it. Again, this is something that actually really relates to me. And I know for me in itself, a lot of shame, a lot of self-blame and stuff like that came up for me. How do you feel that carrying the silence affected you, and how did you navigate it, and how did you eventually feel safe to actually voice it?
I kept silent, and I'll be honest, I kept silent because I always thought if I say anything, I'll be blamed. And unfortunately, we know that women are blamed a lot of the time when something happens. So I was sexually assaulted by a colleague. I'd been on a work night out. He was supposedly getting me back to the hotel to be safe. And I think I blamed myself because I'd had a drink. So I was like, oh, it's my fault. Didn't speak about it at all. And then when #MeToo happened, I posted that on my Facebook and it blew up in my face because it literally all came bubbling up to the surface. I'd held it in for years. And I had counselling for a number of months with a really good counsellor who just consistently had to work with me to make the point that actually just because you're drunk, that means you can't give consent. That does not mean what has happened is right. None of this was right. It was not your fault. And it did take quite a few months to go through that process because I'd blamed myself for a very long time. And like you say, you get feelings of shame, you know, why did I do that? You know, all this stuff. And I think because I'd buried it, that's why it blew up in my face so royally. And that was probably the catalyst that started me thinking about the book in the back of my mind, because I was like, if that's happened to me with someone I trusted, an older person who was supposed to be looking after me, how many other people has that happened to? How many other young women have been in that position where they've gone out on a night out at work, maybe had a few too many, and then been in a position where they couldn't give consent and they couldn't like stop someone, and then they've been assaulted. So it's been hard, but I think I wish in a way I'd been able to speak about it sooner, because I think there's a lot of damage that it does when you can't. So I sort of hope that by, you know, sharing my story, it helps other women. And I know it has. I've had plenty of DMs from women who've read the book and they've been like, oh my God, you know, this happened to me. And, you know, just having that forum where women can talk about it, because, you know, unfortunately, we know the statistics when people report to the police, you know, it's made so difficult for women. There's so much blame out there. You know, what was she wearing? Had she had a drink? Blah, 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 blah. And it shouldn't be like that. It's not right. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't speak about it and we shouldn't be able to support each other, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I do think it just takes that one person to open up and be vulnerable and be able to open up and share their story. That can really, as soon as somebody comes across that can have that impact and that ripple effect to make other people feel comfortable that they can open up too. And it isn't just me and it has happened to other people and I don't have to feel that shame. And that is about what EmpowerHer, this podcast, is about, is that I hope that people will come across these episodes that is going to resonate with, they're going to have similar backstories themselves, what they can relate to and be like, oh my God, like she went through that, she's done this, look at her now, she's overcome it, this is the mindset she took with her through it, and they can take some great tips from that and just feel reassured that they're not alone.
Yeah and the thing is, it's hard when you go through it, you have all sorts of things going through your head, and like, you know, a big part of it was for me was like, oh, why was I such an idiot? I felt absolutely heartbroken that somebody I'd trusted had done that to me. That was probably the hardest thing for me to get over, was that somebody I really genuinely thought was a friend and who I trusted not only broke that trust but assaulted me. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things. It's a violation of your body at the end of the day by someone who's a lot more powerful than you. And, because let's face it, a lot of the time men are stronger than women. I certainly would not have been able to fight my way out of the situation, but it was the fact that it was somebody I trusted. So then you have that whole question thing in your head about, what's wrong with my judgment? What have I done something wrong? So I think it's something I'd say to any woman who has been through it and maybe hasn't spoken about it. It's really, really important that you do, because if you don't, it can bite you later on. And I think you can go through it with a good counsellor can help you sort of not only deal with all the questions and the blame and the shame and everything else that you've got in your head, but can help you heal. You can't change what happened, but you can heal from it and you can move forward. And, it's only really since the book came out that I've openly spoken about it. And I've done it at a couple of events where there's been a lot of men in the room, and the faces on men when a woman actually stands there and says what happened to her, they are genuinely shocked. And I think this is the bit we have to remember. 99.9% of men are not bad people. It's the 0.1% that do these things. And if we talk about it more, we can out those men at the end of the day. Those men won't be welcome because other men will learn how to be allies to women. They'll start to know that they hear those nasty jokes or the sarky comments or the slurs or sexual insults when there's no women in the room, and they'll stand there and go, that is not okay. They will flag that person is not a good person, and hopefully we can eradicate what happens to women.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any kind of tips that you would give women listening who feel either overlooked, kind of not appreciated, or even just unsure of their worth? What would you say to them today? What kind of tips and kind of mindset tips would you give them?
My first one isn't mindset. My first one would be find a mentor. In fact, find more than one. You can never have too many mentors. Just randomly reach out to someone you respect and ask if they will mentor you, because actually that's really, really helpful, having a sounding board that you can talk to, and not just your own sex or gender. Go for all sorts of different people. So I've got mentors that are men, women, I've got trans mentors. And remember, mentoring is an up and down process. So you mentor them as much as they mentor you. That actually, having that sounding board is really important. I think one of the big tips I give to people is to write down every week some of the things you've achieved. And then at the end of the month, just confine it down to sort of some main bullets and look at that and just go, look, actually I've done all this week. Realize how good you are. I think one of the best exercises I had with coaching was I think I was early 30s, and she said, I want you to write down one thing you like about yourself for every year you've been alive. And actually it took me about 3 weeks because it's really quite hard, but actually I add to that every year now, because actually that's really important as well. Who are you? What are your values? What do you like about yourself? When you start to actually look at these things, you realize actually how much you've achieved. And your achievements at work, not just what you've done in your day job, but what courses have you done? Are you chartered, for example? I got my Freedom of the City last year. There's all sorts of things, and you suddenly think to yourself, actually look at all this stuff I've done. Actually, I'm pretty bloody amazing. And to actually sit there and do that on a regular basis is really important. Like, people talk about journaling, and don't get me wrong, I like journaling, but I'm more of a bullet point girl. So for me, just doing a few bullet points of what I've done and what I've achieved, even when you feel like you've achieved nothing, you'll have something on that list.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you've ended on that as a good tip as well, because I do feel like so many of us, including myself, I'm guilty for this. We focus so much on the negatives and forget about the positives and what we have done. And I'm really trying to navigate that in my life, because I've spent so long always thinking, oh, I still haven't done this, I haven't achieved this, I didn't hit this goal, whatever it be. And I forget to actually look at what I have achieved in a year. And now I actually look back and reflect on what I have done. And I look for the proof of showing me my strength and my resilience and how far I've come and the growth I've had, even looking back at pictures. and where I've come from, like how far I've come from certain times in my life to now, and it's so important to do, because we are very bad at that, aren't we? Where we just look at the negatives and we forget all the positive things about ourselves. So I love that you've ended on that. That's brilliant. Great tip. So just finishing up, because we are coming to the end of our episode. So we always finish with a question: what does empowerment mean to you?
I think empowerment to me means empowering myself. And some of that might be learning to put boundaries in place. I mean, I am really bad at saying no. I'm getting better at it, but it's something that I am really, really working hard on. Empowerment it's not just about empowering other people, it's about empowering yourself and stopping to hold yourself back.
I love that. And I think everything starts with yourself, doesn't it? And the more that you've empowered yourself, the more you would naturally empower others anyway and help them step into their power. So I love that. Thank you so much, Faye. I have absolutely loved speaking to you and getting to know more about you. I know this episode is going to help so many people, men and women. So thank you so much for your time today and coming onto the episode. And I look forward to following the rest of your journey and story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Faye. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.